Well, welcome everybody. It looks like we've got 10 o'clock. And I know that Commissioner Banks let me know that she actually has 2 sick kiddos or 3 sick kiddos at home. So she's going to try to join us for the childcare discussion, but I'm going to text her right before then. I know that Commissioner Toyoka also has an engagement at 11 that he needs to get to. So we'll try to move briskly through the agenda. I'll go ahead and start. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. And we'll go ahead and start with our first item, which is the county manager update. Turn it over to County Manager Don Boone.
Good morning, Chuck Whalen, members of the board. Just real quickly, I just wanted to remind all that Monday is a holiday. So it's Juneteenth, so the county offices will be closed on Monday. The other is that we have wrapped up active negotiations with the 3 unions that had expiring contracts as of June 30th. So those contracts will be coming to your board for your consideration soon. And that's all that I have, Chair.
Thank you, County Manager. Do we have any, I missed the last regular meeting when we had our SDR discussion. Can just an update of where we're at with that process, Don?
Sure. So, Chair, members of the board, at the last meeting, the board approved the first reading of the STR ordinance. And so that will be coming back to your board next week for the second hearing. And I know there's an opportunity for the board to still make alterations to the ordinance, to approve the ordinance, and to give staff additional direction if you choose to regarding any elements, but that could include looking at caps in certain zones. And so that conversation will be taking place next week.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, County Manager. We'll go ahead and move on to our next item, which is the legislative interim update. Page 3 of our agenda. We have 25 minutes assigned to this. And I will turn it over to Amanda. Or do I turn it over to County Manager Boone to start?
Chair Quayla, members of the board, thank you. We're happy to have Pac West join us today to give us an update on the recent election and what's been happening with the legislature. And so I'll go ahead and just pass it to Pac West. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Don. This is Phil Shoyers, and thanks, commissioners, for allowing us to join you today. Apologize, my camera's off. I'm traveling out to the Eastern Oregon Economic Summit, so I just wasn't able to be there on camera today. I apologize. We do have Ann with us as well, and Ryan will be joining us here in a few minutes as well. But I did just want to do a quick update. A couple of things that we're going to just tackle are just our overview of what happened during June's legislative days. I'll also talk a little bit and how that ties into some of the priorities that we at least touch on what priorities were updated on and which ones weren't, and then move on to just giving an election update. And I want to be clear on that part, that it's not a partisan one, but just this is a very unique election cycle. And I'll talk about why that is, because it is through these legislative days going to help us position or determine how we are going to go into the 2023 session, and how the county can position themselves, knowing how this election cycle is playing out, regardless of outcomes. We already know certain things will be happening. So I'll touch a little bit on that, and then I'll hopefully end with some time to answer any questions you might have. But real quick, Amanda, if I could go to that first slide for the June legislative updates. So we just got through the legislative days. Again, these are every other month during the interim. During these 3 days specifically, we just let you know there was about 34 total committees hearings that occurred, and very high level what the focus was, because bills are obviously not being discussed right now in the sense of we're not in session. So what they really focused a lot of the agendas on were giving implementation updates on bills that have passed in this last session or the session before. And what I mean that is specifically they were talking about the Future Ready funding, where the governor's office got $20 million. It originally in the budget was scheduled to go to HEC, or the Higher Education Coordinating Council. That ended up not going to HEC. They actually moved that to BOLI because that money is for apprenticeship, standing up apprenticeship opportunities, trainings, and some other similar workforce training programs. They updated folks that they are working through regional workforce boards that are already in place. We heard that there's some pushback from some counties are not happy with that approach. Some are. So this was definitely a hearing where you got information on where they were in progress of trying to get the money set up to go out. But at the same time, you're starting to hear pushback on how not everyone's happy about it. And so it was a standard update. No real actions were taken. They were just reports. In addition, other bill implementation updates included just where rulemaking was on certain bills, specifically with forest fire. They talked a little bit about that, where they stepped back and are going through a little bit longer of a rulemaking process than they originally thought, because as they were going through and having public hearings, additional concerns have gotten brought up, and additional resources have landed in the state through FEMA. As you commissioners know, that process is very long, getting the federal money back into the state after natural disasters. So as that's starting to trickle in, there's some strings attached. So they're learning they have to go back and do a little bit of different rulemaking to make those funds available to other services in recovery. Other quick updates is the housing committees met. We have 2 of the 3 priorities that the county has asked us to kind of focus on are housing or homelessness or houselessness focuses. That wasn't touched a lot in legislative days. They had a lot of reports on housing supply, updates on funding that came out of the last session, steered towards helping with homeless shelter services. However, that updates were more in the sense of, yes, we are getting the grant programs up and ready to get out the door. So there was no real discussion beyond it, money's hitting the ground, things like that. Again, it was agencies reporting back that they are in process. And then I'm going to let Ann just give a high update level on that as well. She followed those committees. Ann, did I miss anything there? Anything you would like to add just so the county, because I know housing is very important to the county.
So they did talk a little bit about, they have 2 work groups. They're working on, there's going to be, they're looking at like an omnibus bill that's going to come out for session. And they've got 2 work groups put together. One is on housing needs and one is on housing capacity. And they're going to wait for recommendations from these groups and then work on their legislation for next session. I know there was a lot of talk about people concerned about the money and the effort going more into maybe more urban areas. And so several people voiced, that they wanted better communication between the agency and the rural counties. It was kind of interesting that I actually got a hold of the work group list. And there is Mallory Roberts from AOC, Tamra Maybot of Morrow County, and Matt Lawyer of Marion County are the only county representatives on those 2 committees, which are quite robust. There are a lot of city people, however. But anyway, so they did talk about that. And they talked about there was an interesting one at the end where they said that if we kept up with historically what we had built, we were never going to meet the demand that we have. And so I think that that's one of the things about accessibility and how they're going to be able to supply enough housing over the next decade for the amount of people that we have just in general. But anyway, they are talked a little bit about the Senate Bill 1536 implementation, and they'll be meeting again. And now that I have this work group and engagement calendar, I'm going to try to follow these as they come about. So we'll have a better idea of what they're going to have in their bill for session. Thanks, Phil.
And then I would like to piggyback off of what Ann said there, and this kind of goes into our next conversation about moving forward in timelines. One of the things specifically on housing is that we're starting to see some agencies release their agency request budgets. So as Amanda, is that next slide the legislative timeline by chance? I think it is. Perfect. Okay. So part of this, of what you're seeing, is we're starting to get into legislative days, but as we get past them, we're starting to hit those deadlines between now and next legislative session, where we're going to start seeing the next state budget come together. And key deadlines that we need to remember on that is that half of those agencies are scheduled to have their agency request budgets. So it's them working with DAS, putting together what they currently have, or known as the current service level within their agency, how to maintain that, what it will cost to fund it at, with inflation levels, and then add what they call policy option packages, or POPs, or so basically packages they would like to add into their agency on top of what they currently have. That might be a policy program, it might be staffing, it can be a range of different things. So half of those agencies have to have their agency request budgets to DAS and the governor at the end of August. The other half have them delivered in September. So we're starting to see some of those agencies release publicly those documents. It allows us to start seeing where that's going. On a separate timeline, there's once the governor has received these, she then can review them, add to them, take away from them, and then say, and then in December or January is likely when she's going to do that, given the election. It will be a she, given that all three candidates are she will then release her governor's recommended budget for 23 through 25 in January, right before session starts. That's what the legislature then receives, and that's the starting point for them to have conversations to adopt the legislative budget. So I wanted to go through that real quick with you on the timeline principle, because as we're starting to see these, we saw the housing agency release their agency request budget. And one of there's two placeholder bills that they're going to be bringing forward. One of them is what Ann just mentioned, is they are asking for a lot of money to try to get, as Ann said, if they just keep building as they are, they're never going to keep up with demand. They have a placeholder bill that's going to be asking for a significant portion of the state's bonding capacity to go and build and try to catch up on that backlog. So we are able to start seeing some of these bills being proposed come forward. The other thing that is a placeholder that I think the county, we're working with staff on getting a letter, and I apologize, I'm getting out in front of you. We're just talking in generality here, is the one is just a placeholder bill that says the governor's office is going to have a task force or a work group that works on proposing solutions or resources needed to address houselessness or homelessness services. And that group hasn't started yet, hasn't been put together yet. They are the agency request bill or says that they plan to release those recommendations sometime this fall. So they will introduce basically a bill that will be gut and stuffed with whatever the recommendations come out from this task force. It was our recommendation to say, as we're looking at this moving forward on this legislative timeline, is it does not hurt to reach out and say, hey, these are the concerns of Clatsop County. Let's make sure that, as this group's meeting, please take these concerns into account. We'd love to hear, worst case scenarios, they don't get included and we bring them to the legislature. But best case scenario is they get adopted into a potential bill that's an agency bill moving forward. And so as you're asking us on a legislative timeline, what we're doing right now, that's where our minds are. We're listening to these conversations, trying to pair up with the agency request budgets coming forward and trying to get ahead of not just being reactive once session starts in February, trying to see what we can be doing now to engage and make sure that some Clatsop County concerns, recommendations, and priorities are built into the recommended budget. And it just gets us a little bit further down the line. So outside of the agency budget, you see on this timeline that we will have another set of legislative days in September. And that's when you start seeing requests or LC draft dates. What that means is members have to start submitting, if they want their bills heard on the first day of session next year, September 23rd, they have to have that request into Legislative Council. That request is then delivered back to them in December. It says December 5th there. And that's when we're going to start seeing bill concepts that all of these members are proposing. And so as we move forward with meeting with you, we're going to be pairing up what we see come out in draft form with the county's priorities and say, these are ones that are going to affect those priorities. These are ones we should support, oppose, and bring that to you for your consideration. Any questions on the timeline before we go to the next slide? All right, Amanda, could we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. And then I'm going to pair it with Ryan on this. We're going to give you a quick update on the election. And again, this isn't in the sense of trying to talk about what party's picking up seats, anything like this, but it's an important concept that as we're looking at county priorities and how to position moving forward, this is a very, very unique election cycle because of the amount of turnover that we are going to see, regardless of who wins. The sure number of turnover in both parties is so significant, it's going to affect how we position priorities for the county. And we can start engaging on that now so that we walk into a session in 2023, not always in a reactive mode. And so, Brian, I don't know if that's a good place to kick it over to you. If not, I'm happy to go a couple more slides if you'd like me to.
Sure. So like you can see the data here, we had the most activity that we've ever seen in a modern recent election, 37 total primaries in House and Senate. There were more actually on the Republican side. There was a bit of an enthusiasm gap there where there was a lot more energy and activity with candidate filings on the Republican side. And you could see that in the number of primaries that were on the Republican side versus the Democratic side and the number of candidates that were in the different races. Like in the race for governor, you had 35, you had 32 with PACs and 19 of them were on the Republican side. So there was a lot of activity. When you looked at enthusiasm of voters, if you go to the next slide, you had a slight uptick on the number of the turnout on the Republican side, but it did not sort of marry up or match the enthusiasm that we saw on the candidate filing side of things. The big point, though, that Phil was sort of getting at is that 65% of the entire legislative body right now, it's 50% if you look at first term and second term legislators. But by next session, and when 2023 session starts, 65% of them will have never served in a in-person committee meeting ever. And that's just sort of a mind-boggling figure to think about. So there's an awful lot of turnover. A lot of legislators are kind of coming in as blank slates. And so it's going to be really incumbent on us that we work hard in December and in January with the representatives that have been elected to really help set a good foundation of information about the issues facing Clatsop County, because they're really going to be blank slates. If you go to the next slide, this is a sort of graphical representation of what I was just talking about. On the left, you see first terms and second terms making up 50%. And if you just look right to the one on the right, you can see how much that's grown. Just in a couple election cycles, it's really come to dominate. And so there's going to be an awful lot of aggressive educating going to be needed on our side. You go to the next slide, you'll see the difference. This is looking at the same basic information, but through a lens of partisan, political party. And you can see how many resignations, how much on the right bar there, that blue is twice as high. That's really showing how many more resignations and retirements we've seen on the Democratic side. That's creating a lot more open seats than we've had in the past. That just underscores our point about the need for an aggressive educating process through December and January. And Phil, I don't know if you had something else you wanted to mention on that. I want to give you an opportunity to pipe back in here.
No, I think that's just the thing that's really important for us to stress is any opportunity that we have where we're going to be, and when we, again, I guess I want to say is we just know these numbers. This isn't looking at picking up seats for any party, anything that this is just surely looking at knowing most of these seats, regardless of the candidate or what party, both of them are going to be a first termer. So that education is going to be so critical. And I think that's maybe where we need to make sure that we're lockstep with you commissioners and the staff, so that when there's an opportunity to talk to a legislature, there's so many new ones, we should be grabbing that opportunity all the time. We were talking with staff about, it doesn't have to be one-on-one meetings. It could be economic summits. It could be starting the Coastal Caucus back up. Any way to draw a group of these very first term, second term legislators in where we can help educate them on priorities for the county. I think that is where that is going to be definitely a big thing in the playbook for the county.
I think it creates opportunities for us, especially on issues like the TLT, where there's sort of very long-standing ingrained trepidation about making changes and revisions to that, and really have an opportunity to hit people that are blank slates and help set good foundational information and set conventional wisdom in a way that steers towards the type of solution we're looking for.
Yes. All right, Amanda and Don, I think that I guess, could we pause and see if there are any questions? The last thing we wanted to cover for you folks today is just tackling the 3 top priorities that we know we're working towards looking for those opportunities in. But is there any questions before we get to that, or?
Any questions for Phil, Ann, or Ryan from PacWest? Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in what you brought to us about what was going on with the when you were talking generally of housing. I assume when you said the housing budget, you meant OHCS.
I did. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's okay. That's okay. And I was particularly interested in your insight about what they were, some of the proposals that they were making. They have a brand new commissioner director, who we had the pleasure of meeting a couple of weeks ago at a groundbreaking for one of our housing authority developments. She's very enthusiastic, and she seems to have a lot of, she has, first of all, she was promoted from within, and she has a lot of good experience, but she seemed to be particularly sympathetic with the issues of rural housing. And so that's something I hope that we can move on. Is there a way that you can keep us informed as these things come forward? I'm very interested in the bonding capacity issue as well. Is there any way that we can more closely follow some of these deliberations, or can you just kind of give us some kind of a, I don't know, a heads up when some of these discussions are going on, so maybe we can listen in.
Absolutely. And some of them aren't discussions, Commissioner. The knowledge we got from that is, and this is going to sound, this is where my team tell me I have the calculator and the nerd goggles on, is these are just 100-page documents that they go and they publish and you go to their individual agency websites and read them. But there are opportunities with the housing agency specifically. They did have some public hearings. They didn't phrase those public hearings in the sense of this is our agency request budget, but in the sense, and so I wish they would have, because then I think they might have had a different engagement. But they talked about it in program area. So they went and had public meetings about housing supply. That's a very broad topic. But then when they published their documents, they said, we pulled this information from these previous meetings. So the answer to you is absolutely yes. When I have the opportunity and I see, oh, yep, they're connecting that to the budget, I will make sure I'm tracking that and get back to you on it. There's just some opportunities where I won't find that out until I'm reading the document. And when I read it, I will also make sure at that time that you're kept in the loop as well. It's every agency, as you know, just they have a very different process depending on the agency leadership. Housing is way ahead of the game. I will give them credit for that. We haven't seen a lot of documents coming out from any of the other agencies yet. And so they are definitely ahead of a lot of the others. So,
Okay.
but yes, Commissioner, I commit that to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? I'm not seeing any. I'll turn it back over to Phil.
All right. Well, there are three main well, I shouldn't say the top interim priority, a secondary interim priority, and a third interim priority that we've been focusing on with your staff. The first one is related to the transit lodging tax, the TLT. We have been visiting a little bit internally about how we can start positioning this conversation for the 2023 session. Part of that is we are working with the folks at the Eastern Oregon Economic Summit to, they are going to have two panels on housing, one from a city perspective and one from a county perspective. Anne mentioned that one of the members of those task forces, Tamara Mabbitt from Morrow County, she is the one that's helping put those panels together and doing the housing tour out there. And so, but Monica, Amanda, and Dawn got me some of the thoughts around all three of these priorities and how they relate to housing, and I have shared them with Tamara. She has assured me that while the agenda for the breakout sessions is kind of set, that there is no harm in having those topics or those conversations as part of the discussion. She felt like they meshed. I don't know how the panelists are going to weave them in, but it allows them to start having a conversation with other elected officials in the room. There's going to be 14 legislators there. And ideally, having these conversations come up now allows us to go into a session saying, this isn't the first time you're hearing about it. This is part of conversations across the state this interim, whether it's the Eastern Oregon Summit, if we can get the Coastal Summit back up and going. It allows the conversation to start happening. And so we've been working with them. That's a recent activity and update. That will be this Thursday, Friday. In addition, we monitored the legislative days about this topic as well. There was nothing on it directly. Anne already kind of gave the update on the other two. So legislative days really didn't have a covering of these three areas to report back to you on. But on the TLT specifically, we've also worked with Eco Northwest to figure out if there's a way for them to look at the impacts of the tourism, especially during COVID, or especially in rural areas like Clasup, where you have the influx of these the tourism that comes in, utilizes infrastructure and leaves, but the revenues from the TLT are very limited in how you can spend them. And it's so looking at opportunities, is there a way to describe it in a better way so that we have information and a good economic case to bring to the legislature in 2023. So we're currently working with Eco Northwest to hash that out. We're working with your team to figure out what is the right verbiage on that, and then ideally bring that back to you folks with a more full, robust, comprehensive update. But we're working on the terminology right now. Please correct me, Don or Amanda or Monica, if I butchered that, but that's just the update. We're back and forth with Eco Northwest on that. So, and then on the other two issues related to housing, that was covered by Anne. Nothing really from legislative days. We're looking for those opportunities where they pop up, but they just have not surfaced. I imagine you're going to see more of that pop up during September legislative days, where you're going to start seeing bills that might cover those topics. But there just has not been any updates there. So,
Bill, I see that Commissioner Webb has a question. Commissioner Webb.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm sorry to be you're just kind of hitting on a couple of my favorite subjects here. In terms of the data available for the economic impacts of tourism, Travel Oregon, which of course has profited more than any other organization from our increase in the TLT money, they have a lot of data about this issue. And they also do regular surveys. And I'm wondering, I mean, I have huge respect for Eco Northwest, but at the same time, I'm not sure this demands any more analysis. I really don't. I think we have I think we have a lot of good data about the economic impact of tourism. I think that the more important issue is the burden of tourism on local governments. That was probably a bad word, but just the responsibilities that cities and counties have in accommodating the tourism populations that come here. And that I think is where maybe the additional data is really required. The issue, for instance, of the impact of tourism on our local police forces, just all of those things that happen, and everything from infrastructure, to the consumption of fresh water and the disposal of waste. So to me, that's where the emphasis needs to be, on better information.
And if I might,
Yes, Don.
Yes, County Manager.
Commissioner Webb, that is exactly what we are looking at. So you just provided a great overview of the conversation that we're having with Eco Northwest. What we're really looking at is what are the impacts of tourism on the county's infrastructure. Because right now, those are creating a county not of 40,000, but at times it creates a county of 80,000 or 100,000. And then right now, all of our finances really at the county level are coming from the property tax payers. And so, and it isn't scaled for that larger population. So what we would like to do is have Eco Northwest take a look at that infrastructure impact and use that as a basis for then hopefully talking about the allocation methodology for the TLT, so that it's not limited to 30% discretionary, but maybe it should be, something more, something
Significantly more.
Yeah. So thank you, Commissioner Webb, for providing a great overview for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our team at PAC West? Well, thank you, Phil and Ryan. Do you guys have anything additional to add?
I do not.
Okay. Appreciate the presentation. Very good discussion. Lots of changes coming this year. So thanks for keeping us abreast of them, and we'll be in contact soon. So thank you so much. We'll move on to our next item, which is Child Care Task Force presentation. I've got a number of people that have joined us from the task force. I'll turn it over to Eva Manderson. So she's the Northwest Regional Child Care Resource and Referral Director. And we also have Dan Gaffney, who's a longtime educator. He's worked as a board member of Way to Wellville and been a leader of this task force from day one. And also note that Joanna Lyons-Antley, our county council, has been a part of this group, as Kevin Leahy with Cedar. And then I think we have, of course, Commissioner Banks has been able to join us as well. And Commissioner Banks has been a part of this group. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Eva Manderson. We've got a presentation that she's going to lay out for us, and hope that everybody can see it. I'll turn it over to Eva.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, commissioners. It's nice to be here today. It's an exciting day to share the work that this advisory group has been doing. So I am going to share a presentation. Hopefully I can make that work correctly. Maybe if I can get somebody to give me a thumbs up that you can see a presentation titled Clatsop County Child Care Retention and Expansion Grants. Awesome, thank you. Thank you. So we're here today to talk about some of the work that this advisory group has been doing. A story came out in the Daily Historian just a few months ago, really taking a look at childcare. The Astorian has been really great at covering this issue, and just want to say a quick thanks here. It's not part of the presentation, but really has been helpful in highlighting the challenge in childcare. This quote here came out, like I said, just a couple months ago. Since 2017, the county has lost over half of its licensed childcare capacity. It's more than 1,000 slots at licensed childcare centers, childcare homes, and family homes. And at the time, this story was talking about a couple of facilities that were closing, and both of those facilities cared for infants, which is particularly difficult to find. Complexities of the childcare challenge. I think oftentimes we enter conversations about childcare and we want the solution to be as easy as, I know of a building around the corner from my work that's open, where we could open childcare. And the unfortunate thing about that is that it's much more complex than that. There are complexities around hiring staff and having qualified staff with proper education, a living wage for staff. Currently, most childcare workers have low wages, they have no benefits, and the work is hard. To be with a group of 20 preschoolers that are ages 3 and 4 for your day is really rewarding, and it's challenging. So we also see lots of burnout in staff at programs. We lack program care for infants and toddlers, and we lack care for irregular hours, which we often talk about as being evening and weekend care. So any care that families need if they work irregular hours, say they need care until 7 o'clock at night, that care is very difficult to find. Families who work weekends, also very difficult to find weekend care. Families are coming up against long wait lists if they do find a program that provides the kind of care that they need. And again, a lot of that is because it's difficult to have enough staff, it's difficult to have enough spaces. Childcare programs open because they want to care for kids, not because they want to be a business often. So we hear stories of childcare providers who work in their home who start out as a young parent who decides to stay home and be with their child, and then they take care of the neighbor's child, and pretty soon they've found that they are in business for themselves. And it's important when we're caring for our families, our families, family, neighbor families, or if I was a provider, my family's kids, to charge a rate that would be what it costs to do business. And we also know that it's expensive to do childcare, especially in centers when ratios are low, where we would want them to be. It becomes expensive to, there's always that tension between what does it cost to do business? What does it cost to pay somebody a living wage and provide benefits for them? And how do I do that on what I can feel comfortable charging my family or my neighbor? So this business model is very challenging. There's a low profit margin. We know that it's costly for families. Families are paying significant percentages of their resources towards childcare every month. And if they have more than one child, then that amount goes up substantially. State of childcare in Clatsop County. So this is just a look at childcare over that last 5 years. So the Daily Astorian quote about a loss of childcare over the last 5 years from 2017 comes from these numbers. So the top green bar talks about licensed childcare, and the bottom green bar talks about exempt childcare. So there are many different program types when we talk about both of these, and I won't get into too many of the complexities here, but a licensed childcare program is a program who cares for 3 or more children. They might do that in a home, or they might do that in a center setting. And they are also a program that is not exempt from licensing by way of being a school district or a Parks and Rec program. Parks and Rec programs and school district programs are exempt from licensing, as are programs that operate for 4 hours or less a day. So there's some distinctions between those two bars. In both of these charts, you can see the number of programs by program type. So for licensed programs, there were 21 programs listed here. You can see what their license capacity is. That's how many children Office of Child Care says they can have in their program. And you can see their desired capacity. And you'll note that desired capacity is significantly lower. And that is really a result of lack of staffing to be able to care for as many kids as they can be licensed for. So workforce comes into play in these numbers as we look at this. Exempt programs, you can see that you've got 7 programs that are exempt, and just some notes there below for the data. The loss of childcare has been a longstanding problem pre-pandemic, and during the pandemic, it really shone a light on this challenge. Clatsop County lost 58% of their licensed programs in the 3 years prior to the pandemic. And then through the pandemic, we've had some losses of programs, but we've also had some opening of programs. So when we look at just numbers themselves, whether we're looking at desired capacity or number of programs, we've been really at a hold. So not a substantial loss. However, I would say if we had managed to maintain the programs that did close and open the new ones, we would have seen expansion, which would have been really great for the county. The exempt programs, you can see there, Clatsop County lost 40% of exempt programs in the 3 years prior to the pandemic. And then an additional 66% of exempt programs were lost during the pandemic. So these are recorded preschool programs that closed. I would also note here that during the pandemic, the database where all of these numbers are stored had some changes. And so exempt programs are not required to be in our database. They're not required to be listed with Find Childcare Oregon, which is where we make referrals out of. So as the database changed, we did see some exempt programs that opted not to be in the new database. And that is probably a portion of that 66% loss that we see during the pandemic. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Dan for a few slides here.
Before I start, I want to pause and see if there's any questions that people have at this point in time, or we could wait and hold questions all at the end. It's up to you, folks.
I'm not seeing any right now, so let's go ahead, Dan.
Okay, all right. So this Clatsop Care Advisory Group was, I guess, formally established in the summer of 2021. There were some folks that were working together prior to that and determined that we really needed to reach out and get a good representation of people across the county that are concerned about childcare. Our purpose is to assemble key stakeholders and community representatives committed to actively participate in identifying and coming up with sustainable solutions for retaining as well as expanding affordable quality childcare. With that, I want to pause and just say that after I retired from the schools, I've worked for the last 9 years in various capacities trying to promote childcare and preschool. One of those activities I did was a project for Clatsop County doing their preschool feasibility study. So this is something that I have a definite passion for, and was glad to be a part of this group. What we've done is we've done research, we've done some assessments. So you've seen the data that Eva was able to provide. We hosted listening sessions with the providers so we could hear directly from them about what are their concerns, what are their joys, what are their needs, those types of things. We've explored different strategies addressing the challenges across the state and across the nation. We've been fortunate to have Heidi Eastman McGowan as our facilitator, and she's worked throughout Oregon with a number of different areas but also across the country. And this has been done after her work for the state in early childhood and early on as a child care provider herself. You can see the list of participants and the organizations that they are part of. It's really a great group of cross-section of our community, and I think that's helped us come up with a good proposal that we want to make to you today. Next slide, please. So what we've done in terms of our work is we've discovered a number of things. There's the need to establish a program that provides stabilization support for our existing child care programs and incentivizes creation of new care services, both in-home and in centers. What we are kind of focused on is serving diverse providers in all provider types, serving diverse family income ranges, knowing that there's money out there that the state can provide for lower income folks, but we have those middle income folks who struggle as well. And so we want to move forward and have anybody that we're working with participate in the Find Child Care Oregon website. That will help them find where there are openings and the types of services that are available. We want to support business stabilization with specific child care focused business support. And that's where our friends up at the community college come into play. We want to make sure that we come up with a sustainable multi-year funding stream as the foundation for this project. We want to require participation by those providers that are engaged, that they continue to or receive additional professional development and continually work to improve, because we know everybody can improve whatever job they have. And it lays the foundation for providing a living wage. Currently, the latest data I saw was that the average child care provider who's working full-time makes about half of what a kindergarten teacher makes. And so we need to move forward in trying to improve that. And then we want to obviously support the existing and prospective child care services. So our proposal for retaining and expanding child care within Clatsop County is to establish a grant fund allowing for existing child care programs to apply for funding to support retention and expansion for child care programs. And in addition to this, we want to encourage new providers to get involved as well. So in the grant program, we would have a manager to oversee the program development and execution, to coordinate and seek funding, additional funding, and provide application support and manage the reporting on how those funds are used. We would have a grant review committee that would review the applications and allocate grant funds. So that would not be resting solely with the grant program manager. And we would integrate business support into the program with Clatsop Community College's Small Business Development Center. Expected recipient criteria would be that their wages and rates are in line with other programs across the county. What we don't want to do is have one provider provide high wages so that ends up taking from a lower paying provider where people would leave that provider. We'd lose those services to go to this higher paying one. We want to move everybody up in an equitable way, and so as to maintain the number of opportunities for families that are there. Grants would help recipients provide for that living wage position, as well as to support staff retention. We want the recipients to accept employment-related daycare funds that are provided by Oregon Department of Health and Human Services. That's what I referenced earlier as some of our lower income folks are able to access that depending upon the size of their family. So we want to make sure that the providers are able to receive those funds and serve those families. Programs would be licensed or working towards licensing. Eva talked about some of the providers being exempt. We respect them. We just know that they're not supervised as frequently as those that are licensed. And that's our primary reason for wanting to move forward. The exempt ones are supervised, but just not with the same frequency. And so we feel there's a need to have that high quality that's ensured by outside professionals. And then, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure that these programs are listed in the Find Childcare Oregon program and are open for referrals. How is this going to happen? What we envision is through funding that would come from the county as well as other organizations and individuals. The county budget, I believe, does have the ARPA funds set aside to be $500,000 over 4 years, $150,000 per year for the first 3 years, and an additional $50,000 in year 4. We know we do have letters from Columbia Memorial Hospital and from Providence Seaside Hospital indicating their pledges to contribute funds as well. We have some things in the works and some ideas in terms of other funding sources, such as the community development block grants, approaching city governments, school districts, other public entities to contribute to the success and sustainability of our child care providers, because that impacts their employees and serves our general population. We have some contacts with some of the philanthropic organizations that we know do provide funds for economic development, and that's really what childcare is all about, is helping with the economic stability of a city, of a county, of our state. There's also some state funding that's available to licensed providers, and we know that they have been able to receive that, and we want to maybe stimulate, as in your previous presentation, talking about the legislature plans coming up. We have ties to Children's Institute based out of Portland, who's a huge lobbying organization, advocate for children. We worked with them in the past, and we'll continue to work with them to help legislatures see the need for sustainable child care funding. And then, approaching our businesses, and I know I've had some conversations with some private individuals who have talked about contributing to an organization like what we're proposing. And so I think we have a number of opportunities to add to the money that we're requesting from you. Okay, I think I'm going to turn this over to Eva now.
I think this is me. Thank you, Dan. So just tagging off of where Dan left off, thinking about resourcing and staff needs. We're really looking at this project as being 2 phases to start with. We want to get a really quick up and moving. We know that childcare programs have had some funding coming to them from the state and the feds through COVID, and that funding runs out for them in September. So it puts a little bit of urgency around getting this moving forward. So 2 phases of this project. Phase 1 is July through December, and we would do some contracting with a program manager. Program manager would be a person that works 20 hours a week. And they're the person that is supporting providers to apply for grants. And they are also the person that is working to make sure that we have enough grant funds available to providers. So that person would be contracted. You can see the amount there, $15,600. Phase 2 is where we would get to a more regular cycle. We would have a person hired that would not be an interim person. They would be a person that we've gone out and sought and spent some significant time vetting and making sure that they are the person for the job to carry forward. Other pieces in phase 1, though, before we really jump over to phase 2, I'm a little bit all over the place. The Small Business Development Center will provide support for a fall strengthening business cohort. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that on the next slide. That fall cohort is training and advising for grantees. In the past, this has been funded by my organization, the Child Care Resource and Referral. And in phase 1, it would continue to be funded by the Child Care Resource and Referral. So there wouldn't be funds needed for that in phase 1. Also in phase 1, my agency has had a position that's been open for Clatsop County that we've been trying to hire. This is a quality improvement specialist. This is a person that works with childcare providers to help them with professional development, help them with quality improvement of their programs, connect them with licensing, and can help them with policies and procedures and things that help them to stabilize their business. This person, if we can get somebody hired, would be working in concert with the Small Business Development Center. If not hired right away, then that person would continue to be myself working with the Small Business Development Center to support childcare providers that are coming in. But the long range and short range goal here that you'll see hopefully happening in phase 1 is to get that position hired that's been open for Clatsop County. Phase 2 would be that start in January and moving into something that we feel like is a good stable place for us to be in. Would be that we would have a program manager hired as a contract employee by the county, again, to do that 20 hours a week at $30 an hour. The scope of the role would include additional grant writing and provider support, and that it would be provided through this funding that and this proposal that we're presenting today. The Small Business Development Center would also hire a child care specialist advisor to support the business support program. And that would be a 10-hour a week, $25 an hour plus fringe that would also be part of this proposal. So some of these things are taken care of with other organizations or temporary for the quick startup for phase 1, and then phase 2 finding some traction and some ground to continue forward. Strengthening business cohort is something that I just alluded to, so I'll give you a little bit more information about this. In the spring this year, we launched a cohort with 6 participants. Most of them were from Clatsop County. They received 5 training sessions from Jessica Newhall, who's the Associate Director of Clatsop SBDC, and support from myself. We covered business planning, finances, leadership, HR, marketing, pricing, operations. And in between those training sessions that we were doing every other week, we were doing advising sessions in between. So Jessica and I would meet with the provider. We would talk about what they took away from the last training, what they were moving forward in their program, and really being that support person for them, support team for them for strengthening their business practices. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, oftentimes these are people that have started their business because they love to care for kids. And we've heard some of them say through this cohort, they've learned how to care for their business, which was not the reason they went into business, but that it was a good skill for them to have. Part of this business cohort, we give them, if they don't have something already, for child care management software. Wonder School is a child care management system that helps them track number of kids in their program, number of hours that kids are there. It helps them with their billing. It can help them track their expenses. So it really helps to get them solidified and in a routine around their business. Wonder School also helps them with managing wait lists and communication with provider or with parents. And it's just a one package space for them to do all of that business management work together. So as part of the cohort, they receive a year subscription and support to that. And we also help them get onboarded to that system. Through the last cohort, we did some initial and then final self-assessment reports, and those reports indicated a 35% increase in confidence and knowledge in key business topics. And these were self-reported surveys that the participants joined in with. We have a fall 2022 program planned, and this proposal that's in front of you today would require that grantees would participate in the Strengthening Business Cohort. So really looking to help grantees get their feet under them and solidify their business practices in a way that can move them forward. Fiscal agent for this proposal, Colpac has agreed to be the program fiscal agent. They would oversee and collect and distribute all of the funds for the program, and it would be available for immediate use. They are a 501c3 status that allows for funds from private sectors to be tax deductible, and there would be a fee for service, would only include time and effort, and would be determined upon final proposal. Dan, I think this is where you take over.
Okay,
Or did I jump one ahead?
you go ahead and take it.
Okay, sorry. So this model is a swept up version of something that Courtney Bangs brought to our advisory group, and it's something that we've talked about and thought about as we've developed this and as we've researched. This just really is a nice graphic picture for you of the things that we're trying to work on. So you can see at the far left, we're really looking for businesses, municipalities, school districts, philanthropic agencies to be that funding support. That comes in, it supports this Child Care Retention and Expansion Fund, which supports providers to apply for grants. That goes through the advisory group, so that grant advisory that is helping the program manager to make decisions about who gets grants and who's checking the boxes for all of the things that we're asking of them to be high quality programs. And that money goes out then to programs, which makes for stronger providers, makes for stronger programs. And part of that is being living wages for teachers. So like Dan mentioned earlier, we really would like to get to a space where childcare programs and providers make a living wage, make something that's commensurate with a kindergarten teacher. Right now, we're a long ways from that. And we see this program as a way to help do that without it being on the backs of families. Now it's yours, Dan.
Okay. So the grant application process would look something like this, where we would get the grant application program launched this coming summer. We would publish those details on the county's website. Applicants would complete the required grant proposal paperwork and submit their application to the county. Part of this obviously would be advertising. Once the application is available, we would reach out directly to all those providers that we know of in the county, as well as getting our help from the newspaper and the media to get the word out to all providers. Once the applications are collected, we would ask for a portion of our Child Care Advisory Group to serve as a review committee to review those applications and make the awards in August. That's a short timeline for all this, but we think it's something that can happen. And it's going to serve the need, as Eva said, as some of the ARPA funds are running out for providers, this would come in at a good time. Applicants who are awarded funds would join the new cohort for the SBDC and Child Care Resource and Referral Strengthening Business that would start in September. And then we would get reports from each of those grantees based upon the parameters of the grant. At this point in time, we'd say that once we know the dollar amount that we have available to distribute, we could then determine the amount of money that each entity could request. So that's what that first bullet point is addressing. The successful applicants would need to provide detail for how they want to spend those funds that would be strengthening or expanding their services. They would need to provide us with financial statements for the organization so we see what their current situation is. They would need to obviously show the need for the funding to achieve the goals that they have. And then they would need to meet the program requirements that we've listed already. For those that are engaged in the, and all those applicants would need to be a part of the Strengthening Business Cohort and stay engaged with the Small Business Development Center and Child Care Resource Referral after the cohort finishes. That's how we can continue to provide them support. And as Eva mentioned, the feedback they got from the first session that she and Jessica ran, it was real positive. Grants would be competitive if there's more requests than there are funds available. Applicants can receive support from the grant coordinator to successfully submit their application, and so we want to move forward with helping our providers and therefore helping our community.
Dan, I see that. I see
Yes,
that Commissioner Bangs has something she would like to add. Commissioner Bangs.
Oh, great.
Well, so sadly, I'm going to have to get back to my kids here really quick. But the one thing I wanted to add to all of this is that before I have to leave is that solving this is going to be a community-wide situation. We're going to need the community to be involved in solving this continuous issue of this childcare desert that we have. And my goal personally has been to keep this ball moving forward. And I've always being what I consider new to government is sometimes that ball, and I'm sure county manager can attest, sometimes that ball doesn't move as fast as I want it to. And so my thought process that I wanted to put forth to my fellow commissioners was that while we are searching, if we choose to go this direction, while we're searching for a new staff or a new person to fulfill the role, that we have Dan Gaffney in an interim situation help keep moving this ball forward. I really feel like he has the connections, he has the relationships in our community, and I know all of us can agree that he has the experience. And so I just wanted to put that out there as we are discussing this and prior to me having to leave the conversation today, that we consider placing these goals and this idea and the continuation of moving this ball forward in Mr. Gaffney's hands. So anyhow, I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Bangs. I see that Commissioner Webb also has a question. Commissioner Webb.
Yes. Well, I would just like to support Commissioner Bang's proposal. And Courtney, you know, you and I are at the opposite ends of the how government works spectrum. But I can tell you this has been a fast-moving project. Congratulations to all of the people involved in this. This is very meaty. I feel so good about the depth of the background that goes into this proposal. I think this is fabulous and fast. Woohoo! And absolutely anything that could get it done along the timeline that you all have recommended, I think is fantastic. I also love the idea at how broadly this proposal addresses the issue that childcare is something that every member of the community should care about. Anybody who owns a business should care about it, etc. I'm preaching to the choir, I know, but I love the depth and the breadth of this proposal. I think it is just outstanding. I really do. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you both for your vote of confidence, and you know, it's been a huge lift for a lot of people, but collectively we put it on our shoulders and move forward, and we're excited about being able to take this to the next level, hopefully. So thank you. What we do expect to see in outcomes is that we retain all the staff that are there in our various child care provider organizations. We want to see that at least we maintain and hopefully increase the enrollment because as Commissioner Bang said, we have been labeled for a long time to be a child care desert. It's a kind of a formal term that it says that we're greatly lacking in the number of childcare opportunities for families, and it doesn't matter your income level. It's a big challenge for everybody, and we want to maintain the existing number of programs and existing capacity. So those would be ways in which we'd measure our success. As Commissioner Weave says, it's a fast timeline, and so we want to outline what we foresee happening here. In June, we would hopefully, with your support, secure the funding from the county as well as from Claremore Hospital and Providence Seaside Hospital. We have actually two members of COLPAC as a part of this meeting right now, who are entering into conversations with us to be our fiscal agent, and we would want to move forward with hiring an interim part-time program manager, whether that's me or someone else. We want to keep things moving. That's the bottom line, and whoever has that role and the future roles will have my support. I just really want to see this happen. In July, we would be launching the grant program, advertising that to the providers, getting their applications out to them so they can complete them and get them turned back in, so that in August we would review those proposals with a group from our advisory committee and award the grants. Those grantees would then be able to enter into the fall cohort for the strengthening business program. And then we would be looking at what happens in 22 and 23, where we would be evaluating the success from June to December, and then throughout each of those years of 22 and 23. We would evaluate the grant reports, see where the needs are, see how successful projects have been. We finalize job descriptions and hire a long-term program manager and child care advisor for small development center. We would seek additional funding from current and new partners, and we'd be introducing round 2 of the grant funding. So with that, I would entertain any questions that you might have for Eva or myself, or like I mentioned, we've got some folks from COLPAC on here too, but I know the county has worked with COLPAC in the past, and so we're excited to continue that partnership.
Any additional questions from the commission? I know that Commissioner Toyoka had to drop off, and I don't think Commissioner Thompson was able to join us today, but I think Commissioner Webb's comments are well taken, and I completely agree. And I think, Dan, there's no one better suited to step into this role as the interim program coordinator. And so I'm glad that he's agreed to do that or take that on if offered. And I think that would be a perfect fit and a way for us to continue the momentum going forward. And we do have members from the task force. I know Kevin Leahy is with us, and then Joanna as well, was Joanna Lyons-Antley, and then of course Ariane Colombo, and I see that we have Lydia from Colpac as well. So if anybody would like to provide some comment at this time, this would be the time to do so. I'm not seeing any. I just really appreciate the presentation, Eva and Dan. It is very comprehensive, and it certainly was a big lift to get to this point, but it's been well crafted, and we really appreciate all of the hard work from both of you and from everyone on the task force. It's exciting to get to this point, and we'll be bringing this back, I believe, at our next regular meeting, if I'm not incorrect, Dawn, that we'll be able to put this on the agenda and get a vote of approval from the board, or get a vote from the board.
Thank you so much for having us today, commissioners. I echo your appreciation for all of you and the excitement. This is just a huge lift for Clatsop County, and I think will fill a huge need. And it's because I get to work regionally, it's something that I've enjoyed bragging about to a couple other counties, and Clatsop again is setting the bar high, and hopefully you'll have some followers in your footsteps. So just really exciting to be here today.
I would totally agree that this. It's funny. I think back to one of our earlier meetings, and when the minutes were being written, I think Joanna listed me as a believer in Clatsop County, and I think that's very true. And to see that County Manager Bond, kind of helped us move this forward with some draft budgeting, and then to see CMH and Providence step up and show what value they see. We know the school districts have similar interest, and if you take a look at that list of who's been involved in this, you see it's really a diverse group, and I think it's the group that can get it done with more help. But thank you so much for your time and your attention and your support. Look forward to further conversation.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Dan. Great presentation. We'll move on to our next item, which is the county recognized neighborhood and community organizations. That is going to be on page 26 of the agenda. We've got 20 minutes assigned to this, and I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Gail Henriksen.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I guess my first question is, since we're down to 2 commissioners, did you want us to reschedule this item when you have the full board or more of your members present?
I think that's not a bad idea. I think that would be apt. I mean, obviously anybody can tune in and see the recorded meeting, but at the same time, it's probably a good idea to have discussion when all of us can be available for it. County Manager.
Chair Coelho, member of the board, Commissioner Webb, I would suggest that would be a great path forward. I know this topic is of interest to some of the other board members, and so I think having all 5 board members for this conversation would be preferable. Thank you.
Yep, Commissioner Webb. Yeah, I think we agree with that. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you, County Manager. Don't have any other items on the work session today, so I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a